Welcome back, guys, and we are pushing on with the build. So we left off last time that we painted the kit in the desert sand color, painted in such a way we kind of built modulation into the paint finish, and we were at the point where we could think about properly starting to bring it back together. Now, off camera, all I've done is I've done a very basic enamel wash, and just a very basic enamel pin wash, just to put a bit of detail into the nuts and bolts, just to highlight them a little bit, and it's also filtered the sand color down a bit, so it's made it a bit richer. But I think you can see that the details just really popping now. Got my green wheel on the side because you always need something that's slightly different color, just to give you point of interest. And the other thing I've done, if we can turn this over, is if you can see I've painted the suspension, the airbags for the suspension. So I've also attached the wheels, which is just quite simple with the instructions, just a bit of super glue, and we've glued the cab on, and that's purely because it's got something substantial to pick this thing up, because the axles can be a little bit fragile. So the two things we've got to do is affix the bonnet, which we're going to do with a drop of super glue. So that just clips straight on there. There we go. So that goes on like that. We'll put a little bit of super glue under the edge of the bonnet, glue it down, and then we have to get on the winch deck. Now I left this on the cocktail stick on purpose because I want to show you how easy it is for this to come off, and it's just a simple case of crack, super glue's gone because it's very brittle, and there we go, and the winch deck will fit on just like so. It's quite a snug fit, but we'll just pop it on there, the rear of the cab, make sure we seat the exhaust. It's not very easy to handle this now, it's gotten all the parts together, but that just fits on there perfectly, and we can run a little bit of glue just in here underneath where the jointing plate meets the chassis, and that will be the cab at a point where we can just set it to one side now, and we can think about moving on with the build. So I'll just set that fellow up there nicely out the way. Now I've done a couple of other bits as well. I painted the orange marker lights in, and we've painted in the silver of the headlights and tail lights and that, ready for the lenses to go on. But I'm not going to do any more now. There's more weathering I want to do to this, but we'll wait until we get the trailer unit done. And then there's obviously at the rear, you're not actually going to see it, but we'll do it anyway. At these pieces here, we'll weather these up to make them look like they're all scuffed up and heavily greased up, so the fifth wheel can pivot. But I'm really happy how the cab has turned out. It's looking really good. But we can move on now to beginning the construction of the trailer unit. Now the one thing I need to do, checking these instructions, is wondering about having to paint some of this before we join it on. So I think we're probably going to have to, looking at how this is all going together. But I need to check to see if there are landing legs for this or how it works. I don't think there are any front landing legs like there were on the... No. So that goes onto the front of the chassis, the trailer chassis. I've got stowage boxes. Okay, there's the landing legs there. Do not cement. So they can either be deployed up or down. That's fine. So we know where they're at. That's what I had to make sure. So there's an awful lot of hydraulic lines on this trailer. So that's going to be a challenge. But we'll probably replace them with lead wire because it might be easier. Anyway, we're jumping far, far ahead of where we need to be. So, trailer unit. What I'll do is I'll get all these parts taken off the sprue and laid out as we've done before, and then we'll come back and we will start building the trailer. So see you soon. Right, welcome back guys. So everything is cut out and laid out as directed on the instructions. Just got a little bit of cleanup to finish doing. I just usually clean up with a scalpel blade. There is minimal burring on this kit, so just a small part in line and a swipe with the scalpel blade will eradicate that, no bother at all. If needs be, just a simple medium grade sand and stick. It doesn't need to be too coarse at all. It is just to polish up the parting line. There we go. So you can just swipe off the nub with the scalpel blade and then swipe down the parting line. And then on these rounded sections, sometimes it is easier just to use a sand and stick, but I do like to use the scalpel blade just to try and get the worst of it off and come in and polish with the sanding sponge. Excellent. Right, so that's all the parts prepped. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my glues and then we can actually start to look at getting these parts put together. So back in a second. Right, so got the glues, got a mixture of Revell contactor and good old Tamiya extra thin cement. So starting with this front piece here, we'll glue this piece together here, and it's quite well located. So you've got the ridge on the bottom plate and then the ridge on the side plate where you can locate the kick up. Never easy to do on camera. So if you just place them together like that and then just glue one of them, get that first piece in to bite, and then that will hold the part in enough strength to then get glue along the second piece. So press that piece home. Now that it's the plastic and the glue have bitten into the plastic, we can then run that glue into there and press that home as well. Shouldn't take too long, just be very, very mindful that you don't want to let any glue ooze out the joint or wick out the joint and you touch it, because it will leave a fingerprint in the plastic. Right, the second part to go on is this one here. That's again quite firm locating points. We just need to make sure we're getting it orientation properly. This is where you need a second pair of hands, but you can see there, hopefully, how that locks in together nicely. And just push your thumb against it so it holds together. And then touch and flow with the Tamiya extra thin. And then that will bite and hold. You can see as well we need to glue just along here. So put a little drop of glue in there. Right, we've got this piece to put in, and then there is the metal rod to put in too. So that part goes together there. It's quite a nice fit. Fits well. Okay, and before we put any glue to it, we want to get this metal rod in place as well. So it says metal axle number 2. That just fits into recesses in the side parts. So again, just square it all up. Make sure you're happy with the location. You will get working time with the time you're extra thin. And just touch and flow that glue into place. Gentle pressure. And we'll work our way around the part. So gentle pressure on all surfaces, just so we get them to bond. And then we need to make sure that this part here is square, the ends are square. So just maneuver it until we're happy and satisfied that we've got a nice square joint. And don't worry if there's a little bit of glue leach out. We will get that sorted with a sanding stick. And if we need just to hold these parts together, what we can do is we can either get a peg. I get one of my trusty pegs. Get these ones with the silicone feet on them so they grip the plastic, and just hold that in place. I wondered if that wasn't going to fit. So the other thing we could use, I've got plenty of, is a pair of self-closing tweezers. So just clip them on. No, go the other way then maybe. That's not going to work either. Well, we'll just have to hope for the best. We could use a bit of super glue here, but I don't think we need to. What we can do is come in with a little bit of filler afterwards and fill any gaps that arise. Right, so anyway, there's the first part. The next thing we have to do, there's these two parts that go on here. We're going to leave that for a little while, and we'll work with these side pieces here. So the best thing with the side pieces is just make sure that you've cleaned away any ejector pin marks in case they foul the operation, because it does say do not glue. So this is obviously a movable part. There are minor ejector pins on these parts, but they're really not much at all. So we pop them in. They're a good firm fit as well, which is going to work in handy for us. If we can put these in without having to glue them in the first place, and then we might be able to, yeah, okay, so that's a good fit. And then that piece just clips in like so. Right, same on the other side. We'll just clean them up again. If you didn't want to use a file, we could just use the scalpel just to scrape clean. It's not going to take much, but sometimes small bits of plastic that are caused by a raised ejector pin can make the difference between a part fitting and not fitting. Right, so again, push these home. They're a good snug fit. Yep. That one. A very snug fit. and we'll get that part in there, which is Q18. So just get that in. That is a good tight fit. There we go. Right. So once all the parts are in, we can then commit to glue. And they're nice and free. And the beauty of assembling this and then gluing it is we're really minimizing the possibility of glue going in the wrong place and causing these parts to bind up. So just touch and flow, keep the glue well away from the moving joint. So you can swipe it down the outside of the part. Make sure there's not too much on the brush. And then just touch and flow on the top. And that capillary action of the glue will take itself all around the joints. Right, we're going to let that cure a minute, and then we're going to come back and sort this piece out here and lay in these two small parts. Whilst that's curing, we're going to look at the rest of these parts. So we're going to make this part here first, which is N24, N16, and the two Q25 parts. So just pay attention to the orientation of the right angle on the right angle part here on N16, and it's a good fit, a bit tight, some fouling in there. No, it just needs glue to make it bond. And then there's two holes here on the top, so just make sure you get the orientation of this together properly. Unlike me, you'll have no problems. I have a tendency of not paying attention properly sometimes and end up making parts like this with the orientation the wrong way around. Causes you nothing but heartache later on in the build. Right, I put these two parts on and you can see the detail on these parts are phenomenal. Castellated bolt heads or castellated nut heads, and yeah, they really are nice. Really, really nice. A minor eject pin mark there. I'll get the other one later. Pop that in, touch and float. Right, that's that part ready for its next assembly. Now we have this part here, which is Q5. Get it orientated properly, and we've got Q55, and you can see here that these parts, they're obviously hydraulic cylinders. And you can see here and here are all the hydraulic unions. This is what we're going to have to run our hydraulic lines from. So those parts go in, and then the cylinder itself goes in here on that part there. And judging by how rounded off these attachment nubs are, it would suggest that you might be able to clip these in and out during the build. But we're just going to build it as it is. It's a good fit. There is going to be a seam line, so we're going to do some work here before we press on too far with the build, but we'll see how we get on. Now the question is, do we use Tamiya extra thin, or do we use a bead of Revell contactor? Or like me, you'll probably use a combination of both. So I'm just going to get rid of some old glue. I think that is clear, not sure. If the tube blocks on the glue, just get a lighter, and if there's any glue in the end that harden off, it'll just burn out. Right. You don't need to squeeze too much for this, the gravity will help you and it will allow a nice steady flow of glue to come out of this. And then just gently trace out the joint. And you get a nice even layer of glue along the joint. And the reason I like using Revell contactor is it gives you a really good strong joint. There we go, perfect. Right, we can just pop these together loosely for now. And then, before we apply too much pressure to get them together, we'll pop in the cylinder again, making sure we've got the orientation of the valve gears correct, and then we want to push together. And you get good bite with Revell contactor. For a thicker glue, it's reasonably hot and it does grip and bite the plastic quite well. I've not found a plastic that it doesn't like either, which is good. Right. We might need to get a peg on here just to bring these parts together. What we can do is just use a little drop of extra thin here, just being mindful to keep it well clear of where our moving joint is. So we'll just pop a peg on here right there just to close up that joint, but actually the rest of this arm has bonded really rather nicely. If you want it to be belt and braces, you could just take and run a quick run of extra thin along the joint. But if you get a decent coverage of contact, you really probably not. But that is a belt and braces fix. So we can do the same for the next arm. Just test fit first, just to make sure there's no bonding problems. And then we'll come in here and we'll put on this valve gear. This is where having a good set of tweezers helps for some of these smaller parts. Just go straight on like that. And for a HobbyBoss kit, very accurate, very well detailed. Yeah, quite impressed, to be honest with you. Right, let's just get in here and put some glue down. So same again. Wait for the glue to come out. Don't put any, squeeze the tube, the container. Just let gravity be your friend. And if you were any good at the board game operation when you were younger, you'll be alright using this stuff. Anybody that knows what I'm talking about then is of a certain age. There we go. Nice even bead of cement. And then we just line that up and drop him down. Excellent. And pop in the cylinder. And then we can squeeze it together. Nice little bead of glue coming out. Good solid bond, which is exactly what we want. Again, I think we'll get a peg just in here to close this joint up. One of the best modelling clamps you'll ever get. Humble clothes peg. I'll set that aside to dry. Right, the final pre-assembly that we can use is, or make should I say, is this one here. So it's M4, and then we've got a valve block to go in. That just sits in there. Again, that's a good snug fit. And that's one thing I've found with this model is there's an awful lot of steps to the builds, and it does tax your patience a little bit. So if you're going to take this model on, just be prepared. It's not a quick build, to say the least. It's certainly a rewarding build. You see the size of the tractor unit. It's as big as a main battle tank. So you add a trailer and a piece of cargo on this. There you go, a little bit of filing, perfect fit now. Yeah, but you add the trailer unit and a cargo of your choice, and well, it's really endless, isn't it? If you think of all the vehicle units that US military uses, then you're in for a fantastic display piece. Right, so we've got these sub-assemblies here. We've got this sub-assembly here that fits in there, and these are obviously going into the cylinders that we've put into the arms. So it's quite a good assembly already. Now we've got this part here to sort out. And just come in here with that trusty old metal file. That cleans that up beautifully. Again, I am not pushing any weight on this, it's just letting the teeth do the work. And then you can come in with a sand and stick just to polish up any file marks. We'll need to use a sand and stick just to get these parts at the joint. Same on the underside. And if you're needing a slightly coarser stick, then just these particular sticks, you can't get them anymore, it's a shame. Phil Flory used to do them, Flory models. They're really, really good, but there are other manufacturers that do double-sided sand and sticks. I haven't tried any because I've got a huge supply of Phil Flory sticks, so I don't need to worry about it at the moment. But one of these days I will have to look to get new sand and sticks. Right. So when we're happy, we've got that sanded to a level that we're happy with, then we can come in and glue these two parts on. A little bit of scraping needed here just to clean this joint up. And modelers should never be afraid of using different tools for cleaning up, and using a combination of tools. The more tools you've got in regards to, you know, scalpels, files and sanding sticks, then the more options you've got for cleaning. Now if you want just to get that surface unified, what you can do is come back in with some extra thin and just paint the surface, and that will dissolve any of the small scratches and leave a nicely smooth surface. Right, we've got these two here, and we're given a handy guide of where to put them here and here, so just orientate them with the guide and then just place them where they're supposed to be. Make sure you get them the right way, because one side has got bolt detail and the other side is slightly curved to handle the curvature of the part. So just eyeballing it. Make sure you're happy. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And because we painted that part with glue just to smooth the surface out, that there was enough tack in the surface to grip these two parts straight away when we laid them down, so that's good. A little blow just to evaporate the residual glue, and that part is good to go. Excellent. So I'm just going to let these cure up, and then we'll come back in and clean up these seams, and then we can get this gooseneck assembly put together. So back shortly. Welcome back, guys. So these two arms have cured up nicely, and I've just taken a round bladed number 23 blade scalpel, and it's really good because you can focus the scrape right down on the seam, and then you end up with taking the high point off the middle and then coming in with the sanding stick or a metal file just to keep the edges true and square. You don't go off squint, but you do need to clean any gluing burring away, because this part's to glue down onto these surfaces. So looking at the instructions, the next thing to do will be to set up the cylinders like so, and then we've got the first cross member goes in here, just a little bit of flash on there, so just nip that away with the scalpel. Check the rest of the parts for flash. It's all good. So this part's universal, it can go in either way, I think. Yep, there we go. So that part goes in there. This part here, M4, will only go in one way. And you've got a nice positive locating holes for it. And then this part here, we've got this right angled edge here to the back, and that goes in there. And that's us at a point where we can actually come in here and just glue these parts in. Now, the one thing I have noticed is there's some ejector pin marks on this side here. I'm not sure if we'll see it, but I think just in case, there's no harm in coming in and cleaning it away with a broad sanding stick. Give it a bit of a clean up. Good enough. So we'll just sight this back in, get it the right way around. There we go. So whilst the parts are in here on the side, we'll come in here and just glue. Good quantity of glue in there. Touch and flow. And then what we're going to do is just gently push so we get that bond starting with the plastic to plastic. And then these arms come together, and notice how this part here goes into that hole there. So it's obviously a pivot point. And then if we lay it on its side, we should be able to then marry up all the opposing fixing points. A little bit of manipulating. There we go. Good positive fit. Very good fit, actually. Very nice. Put it on a flat surface, and then we just make sure we're happy with the squareness of it all. Right, let's get some glue on this. So on the back part, same again, just running the extra thin. Touch and flow. We'll go for a good strong bond. There we go. Then just gently push it together. You don't need to push for all you can. You just want to get that glue in action to start working and going off. And we can check that we've got that range of movement we need. And the movement's unobstructed. Very nice. Right. Now we've got that part in. Lay that to one side. And we can turn over and we can start on this side of the instructions. Now, I've got a few of the parts I've started to take off already. And these parts are going to need a bit of cleaning up. As you can see, there's ejector pins here and here. And they've got raised edges, so they need to be cleaned off. You can see I've cut the part a little way, cut the part off the frame a little bit away from the actual part itself. And then once the part's off the frame, it's easier to get the sprue cutters in and get a nice clean cut that you don't end up stressing the plastic or causing damage if you're trying to manipulate them whilst the part's still attached to the runner. So you can see with a good pair of sprue cutters, then it cleans that part really nicely, and just a few swipes of a sanding stick then removes any trace of the nub, and we'll just give the edges a clean up. And then we've got these ejector pins here. You see there, use that round scalpel just to focus the blade on the actual ejector pin point. Go both ways. And the beauty of using a rounded blade is you can just lift it and lower it slightly, and that will adjust the contact point of where the blade's contacting the plastic, and it means you can really be quite precise where you're scraping, and you're not scraping any plastic you don't want to remove. There's ejector pins here, and again they need a little scrape. And we really just want to make sure we've got that unobstructed bonding surface. There we go. So that's that part clean. Oh no, it's not. A couple here. I don't think we need to fill any of these ejector pins. We just need to make sure there's no flash around them to obstruct the join. So if we look at this part, we can do a test fit. So that obviously goes to there. We've got locating holes here that fit on these tabs. So we can just try it and see. Yep, that is a good fit there. And it's a good fit all along the arm. But it's quite a large bonding surface, so we're probably going to use our Revell contactor to glue this part up, I think. Definitely be using some clothes pegs to get it to bond everywhere it needs to bond. Right, so that's that part there, M10. And I've also got this part here, which is M18. We've got N6. There, and we've got the 2Q49s and N18. Again, just come in, trim up the nub. There's quite a bit of cleanup on these parts, and you get that sometimes with HobbyBoss kits. They can be have a lot of sprue attachment points, but also the little extra nubs that are put on to allow plastic to flow. So you get more nubs to clean up, and then obviously sometimes you're having to clean the parting burrs. Right, make sure we've got this arm orientated correctly. Touch and flow with the glue. Make sure it's square in all directions, which it is. And then the next one to get is we've got this one here. And sometimes these small parts can take up as much time as larger parts, and it's purely for the amount of cleanup work we've got to do on them. Again, make sure this is orientated correctly. It is keyed, so it will only go on one way to the first part. Hopefully you won't find this boring, but sometimes it's good to see how people do remove parts from sprues and how they clean them up, and you get a good idea of the unaccounted time in modeling, because a lot of people sometimes don't account for the amount of time it takes to remove parts and clean parts up, and it can add to the build time significantly. So it is good just to see all this coming together. Now, do not cement on parts Q49, and you're probably going to struggle to see me getting these together with my great big fingers in the way. But what we can do, I think, is we'll just hold this top part on loosely. So that's N18 going on top of N6, and whilst it's loosely fitted together, we can then come in with these parts whilst there's play. Ping it off, of course. Hold on 2 seconds. Right, we're back, and after 2 evenings of searching for this part, I found it. So we can continue on with the build. But what I will do, and it just proves things go wrong for all of us, is I'll put a drop of cement on there so we can actually get that to grip. So there's less chance of it departing stage left as it did in the previous shot, much to my annoyance. Still, we live and learn. So, little drop of glue, hold that part in place, and then these 2 parts just clip in and get caught by the nubs. And just again, just push it down. Those 2 parts are in nicely. Make sure it's all square. A little touch extra glue just to make sure. Okay, so I've got this part done. Now we need the cylinders, which is R42 and 43. Let's see if I've got R sprue on my pile of sprues. Don't know if I do actually. Oh, here we go. R. 42, 43. These are handed, so we'll let it be mindful of how we take them off the sprue so we don't get them muddled up. Well, this should be pretty obvious, but this is where you come to putting stuff on where they are supposed to be on the instructions. Right, a little bit of cleanup. This is where the skinny sticks come in handy because they're a bit more fine in control than the larger ones. And there's just enough spongy nature in them to maintain the curvature. Now there is detail on the ends of these rods here, a little bit of flash. We just want to nip that away. And then in here we don't want to destroy any of these parts. So we'll just come in here with a blade and scrape clean. So there's part 42 and here's part 43. So a little bit flashy, some of these parts. Nothing to be worried about, very easy to clean. Just time consuming, but then if you look at the complexity of this model, it's no wonder it's time consuming. It's a very, very detailed model kit, especially for HobbyBoss. Right, so orientate this in the correct direction and slide on the actuating arms, making sure the actuating rods are in the right location, and then we transfer that to this lower plate here. So this is obviously some sort of the dampening mechanism for the pivot point on the trailer by the looks of it. Let's have a look and see how it fits. Not quite sure actually, to be honest with you. Okay, so that fits there by the looks of it. Yeah, so that fits on there like so. And now we're ready to commit to joining these two parts together. So this is where test fit, and test fit again comes in. So we need to orientate how this all goes together. So I'm not quite sure where. Okay, I see. Yeah. So these cylinders here, a pair of tweezers. These cylinders here actually fit into these slots here. Yeah, it does go in. Okay, right, so first things first, I think what we can do is, now we know what we're doing with these, is we can just take that off, set to one side, and we'll focus on getting this assembly put together. So back out with a Revell contactor, and we want to just put a generous amount on, just around the edges. Down the middle. Focus on that fixing point there. Two ends go in there, and that goes there. And then we want to get this firmly attached to the arm, making sure that it's equal with the overlap, because this bottom piece is slightly wider than this piece, so there is a design overlap, I think, looking at it. So, and then we're going to get some pegs and we're going to peg it up just to make sure we've got that really good fit. Right, click, that's that in place. So this will be a structural part for the kit as well. So this is just increasing that integral strength on the gooseneck of the trailer. We want to make sure it is solid and square. It's quite weighty for a piece of plastic. We can just come along, time your extra thin, and we'll just wick that down the sides. That'll just help that bond. And imagine in real life there's probably a weld bead that's going to be running down this joint, but you don't have to worry about that. But you could if you wanted to. Right, let me get a bag of pegs. I'll just put a whole hush of pegs on. Get this fastened in every way possible and make a good strong bond, because the last thing we want is it to come apart. Take about 20 to 30 minutes for this to fairly bite. So we've got that done, we've got this done, so what we may as well do is focus on to getting the rest of these parts prepped up, and then we've got to think about this hydraulic cabling that goes down through the model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the rest of the parts off the sprue, and we'll look at fixing what we can. It's just putting decals on here, but there's no point in us doing that until we have got the painting done. So let's get these parts off, and then we'll come back and get ready to finish this gooseneck construction off. Right, got the parts all cut off, cleaned up and ready to go. So we'll just build these two parts together first. Hopefully there'll not be too much of a seam line that we need to deal with. If there is, we'll probably be able to deal with it whilst it's on the trailer. Right, this had a nice chance to bite up. Probably could have left it a little longer, but in the interest of keeping the build moving. So, we'll get back to fitting this part. There we go. And then we'll fit these. Need to do here, I think it was a little tight. There's a little bit of flash there. It's just stopping that arm from connecting properly. So we just clean it off. Yeah, sometimes these parts just don't want to play ball. That's it. Right, spot of glue. And now they're in place, we can hold them in place and just get this center section in place. It's proven to be challenging, shall we say. Is that in place properly? There we go. I don't think there's any need not to glue this, so what we'll do is we'll straighten it up, put a drop of glue on. Get that in there. It's a very tricky fit to get it in, that is for sure. Probably put a spot of glue here as well. Yeah. Reattach this cylinder that's come away. That's it. Right, that's all in. Now I'd imagine if you are wanting to put some sort of degree of articulation on this joint when you display the model, then you're probably going to have some degree of deflection in this system here. I intend to display it just as a straight line hitch up, so I don't need to worry about deflection on this, but I should imagine that if you were, you're going to have to consider it, shall we say. So from here we turn it over. We've got the actual fifth wheel pintle here, so this is the bit that engages with the fifth wheel on the back of the tractor unit. That just goes in there, a good tight fit and a good piece of glue coming out. And then we've got here what I presume is some sort of fair lead, roller fair lead for the winching system, so that goes in there. In all fairness, these trucks must be absolutely massive in real life. A sight to behold. So this thing goes back over now. And we've got this tank here, making sure that the filler point here is to the left orientation. And that should just clip into these two slots, and that actually works in really nicely in that the joint's hidden, so I'm not going to see much of that. We can turn it over and just glue the rear, press it home, so that's fine. Then we've got the front of the gooseneck to go on here, and that fits really rather nicely. So that'll be easy enough to glue. Again, making sure that we've got it equal on both sides. Very good fit. Very good fit. And that's one thing I'll say about HobbyBoss kits is 9 times out of 10 they're very good. They just can be a little bit complicated, and they have a lot of parts, so not for the faint of hearted. And then I think we've already discussed it with this kit, that this kit is definitely not for a beginner. An intermediate probably could tackle this, but it's going to be challenging. An expert modeler shouldn't have any problems with this at all, but you do need to have a certain degree of ability, practice, and even just the tools to get this kit built. But certainly value for money, that is for sure. Right, so there's the gooseneck and the front of it all together. We then come to putting on the top section, and that simply goes on like so, and again another good fit. Right down to there, and then the last piece to go on is going to be this piece here that locks down onto this articulation unit. It just seems to float in mid-air, really. Aye. So it just joins in. So we'll have to do that once we've done this. So this is the next piece to go on. Same as before, Revell contactor. And this will obviously strengthen up the front of the gooseneck. And right the way down. So just a fair coating. Don't go overboard because you don't want it to squirt out everywhere. We do want it to have enough of a coat that it's going to bond. And certainly the prep work we put into this part by making sure the center seam was gone, it's paid off with a fine fit with no gaps. So position the front. It's a bit of a loose fit, but we can figure it out. Eyeball it, mark one eyeball, make sure it's all level, equal, and then just work our way back, affixing it to the gooseneck arms. There is a bit of slippage with the glue until it bites, but once it's bitten into the plastic it's pretty firm. And we can come back in, I think, with our clothes pegs and just put them back on at key points to make sure that we've minimized the opportunity for gaps forming. So on the top here, again making sure that the plastic is even, that little overhang is even on both sides. You don't want it to be all over one side and not over the other. Makes me wonder if there's something going to span here, so let's just have a quick check of the instructions to see, because if there is, it might be worth getting that in before anything sets up. Okay, there's nothing spanning across the way, so we're all right there. Oh no, there is this piece here. And that's actually going to hide the seam on the other piece we put in, so that's no problem. Not going to worry about that, we should be okay. As long as we've got it even here, even on both sides, then I think we'll be fine. And that's looking pretty fair to me. Right, so quite happy with that. I'm going to leave that cure up. We've got this last piece to put in, which we'll just do in a minute. See, that just clips in like that. And extra thin will attach that, no problem. So that is that build stage complete. We've got to figure out these wires to go in before we move on to the rest of this build stage here. So I'm going to have a think of that off camera, because it's going to take me a little moment to figure out what I'm doing. And then when we come back, we're going to move on to step 3, which is looking at, we've got a lot of photo etch to fold. We've got more hydraulic lines to put in. More photo etch. So there's quite a lot of photo etch work in this step, so this will probably be a step on its own. And then once we've done that, in fact, we'll probably do steps 3 and 4 in the next video. which should get the gooseneck complete. Yeah, and then step 5, we're moving on to actually building the trailer unit. So we'll leave that one there now, and next time we come back we'll be looking at pushing on with steps 3 and 4 and finishing the gooseneck. And just for scale, if we just want to see where it goes, there's the truck, the tractor unit, and the gooseneck is going to sit on like so, and it does actually lock in, I think, to the 5th wheel. So that's where it's going to sit there. So it's already looking very, very impressive. Quite happy with that. It's going to be big. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be big. Right, so leave it there at that. Any questions, comments, or observations, feel free to pop it down in the comment section below. And stay safe, guys, and happy modeling.